For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So they rejected their priest for a king, a political ruler. That was number one. Number two, listen carefully. Number two is check this out. In 1 Chronicles 17, the Bible says in verse 1, now it came to pass as David sat in his house, that David said to Nathan the prophet, lo, I dwell in a house of cedars, but the ark of the covenant of the Lord remaineth under curtains. Then Nathan said unto David, do all that is in thine heart, for God is with thee. Now, God basically is, David is basically saying here, hey, I'm going to build God a temple. Why? Because look at the shabby thing he's in. Why should I be in this beautiful house and God's house be this, this like not too impressive building? It was just covered by a curtain, and all the glory of this temple was inside. It was inside. So David is saying, look, God needs to be a God. God's house needs to be a house of splendor. A house of just, a grand house. So he's about to build this. When the prophet Nathan comes back to him, David says to Nathan, go and tell David my servant, thus saith the Lord, thou shalt not build me a house to dwell in, for I have not dwelt in a house since the day that I brought up Israel unto this day, but have gone from tent to tent, and from one tabernacle to another. Wheresoever have I walked with all Israel, spake I a word to any of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedars? Get this, guys. God is saying to David, have I ever asked for a house? I don't want a house. Don't build me a house. In fact, he says, I will build you a house. He says, I'm gonna raise up a seed unto you that will build a house. Now watch this. Listen carefully, beloved. God says of this seed, listen, I will bless this seed that his kingdom may reign forever. You know what David thinks? David thinks that God is talking about his son, Solomon. No. Let me ask you, did Solomon's kingdom reign forever? No, it didn't. Who is the son of David that God was really talking about here? Yes, you got it. The son of David was Jesus. Jesus was going to come and build a temple for God, a temple, listen carefully, made up of his people from all across the planet, from every kindred race, kindred tongue, and people. But David doesn't understand this. So what ends up happening is that he builds this centralized house to centralize the worship of God. God never intended for his house to be a house of grandeur. And what ends up happening is that Israel begins to trust in ceremonies and forms, outward beauty, instead of the inner worship. These two things end up leading to Israel ultimately rejecting the very truths that God gave them. Number one, they reject their priest for a king. And number two, they centralize the house of worship. They now are into outward forms instead of the inward glory. And as a result, watch this. The children of Israel begin to set up altars to other gods. You see what's happening here? They begin